person. I told them the joke and no one laughed. And I thought, like, maybe this just isn't an in-person joke, right? So I called up my family. I told them the same joke and no one laughed. So I was like, okay, just maybe it doesn't translate over the phone. So I work from home. Next time I hopped on a Zoom call, I told the joke to my colleagues and no one laughed. So I was like, this joke is not even remotely funny. It's the dumb ones. It's the dumb ones, right? They always take a second.
I was like, where's the punchline? When's he gonna get to the joke? Okay, that one was good. Yeah, it takes a second.
Yeah, the best ones take a second to get.
Because it's kind of like the whole aristocrats joke.
Oh god!
Yeah, doesn't that one like take forever?
Yeah, and
it does.
and
Like there's multiple versions, and it's just gross thing after
Let's
gross
just
thing.
not even go down that road.
Yeah, we're going to stop.
There's like a documentary about it at one point.
There is,
yeah. That's how I found out about it.
Yeah, I watched that same documentary.
Oh no!
Oh no! I knew better than to click on it.
It's really good though. You should watch it. It gives good insight on comedy and how different people do their jokes and delivery and stuff like that, but they all get to the same point. Kind of like this podcast. So this is As Dad as It Gets, the podcast where sometimes our dad jokes require a little bit of thought. And I'm your host, Larry, and with me today, as always, are Tom. And actually, this is the first podcast where we announce this. We have a new host, which is John.
Hello, everyone. I am back.
How's everyone going?
Welcome,
doing whatever. Which one of those.
And today we have a very awesome guest. He's been branded as Walmart Seth Rogen. I affectionately call him the Mr. Rogers of TikTok. Michael Vaughn, or Worldshaker on TikTok is your username, right?
Yep. That's
okay, perfect. Yeah. So with you, Michael, tell us a little bit about your dad journey. Like, how did you become a dad? How long have you been a dad? Like, all those details.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were fortunate enough to get pregnant on purpose. Like, I know every once in a while, like, it's not always planned, but this time it was like deliberate. So it was like really exciting when we found out in, like, I think it was May 2019 that we were expecting our first. And I know you all talked about this on a previous episode, but I cannot stand those dumb dad jokes, you know what I mean, where it's like every commercial is just a buffoon dad who doesn't know how to do laundry and makes everything pink, and drove me a little bit crazy because I wanted to be like an active, engaged partner. I wanted to be an active, engaged parent. So I was like reading all the books, going to all the classes, doing all the stuff. I don't know if you guys had a chance to do boot camp for new dads, but it's an awesome program. I really recommend it to anyone who found out that they're going to become a dad. It's just for dads. So no moms are there. It's just dads. And part of the class that I really loved is they have like veteran dads who bring in like their 3 to 4 month old. So you can ask them questions. You can interact with their baby. You learn about like how to support your partner as they give birth and deliver, and what does it look like postpartum and things like that. So learned a lot. And I actually love the class so much that I talked to the guy who led my section about being a veteran dad to come back with our kid after they were born. And unfortunately, our kid was born at the beginning of February 2020. And so 6 weeks later, COVID happened and like everything shut down. Everything shut down. And like, I think sometimes it feels so far away in COVID years that like, I feel like I'm talking about something that happened a decade ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But because of that, like people forget, like we didn't know how bad it would be or not be, and there were no vaccines at the time. We didn't even know like how it was transmitted for a while, and so I wasn't able to participate in the class. I wasn't able to do some of the parenting groups I wanted to do. I wasn't able to get together with folks. We were the first in our friend group to actually have kids, and now we couldn't hang out with our friends. So uh, it was like it was a very challenging transition for me because we were pretty isolated. Even more so because I've talked about this in other places, but my partner's an ICU nurse, and she was on the flex team at the time. So that just meant that she goes to the department with the most need. And that kept me in the cardiac ICU where they were sending all the COVID patients. And she had set up the COVID hot zone with them there. So she would like literally go to work, and prior to COVID, she would see like maybe 3 or 4 people pass in a year, like 3 or 4 patients who just didn't make it because their body was just trying too hard to die. But with COVID, literally everyone that she interacted with, every patient that she treated except one, ended up dying because they were incredibly sick. And so that's obviously like scary. So we bubbled really hard, not just because we were worried about getting COVID, but because we were worried that we might give it to other people.
Yeah.
So because of that, a big part of my outlet, like I loved presenting, I loved training. I did a ton of that before COVID. And I really wanted to connect with other parents. So I took on the time honored COVID tradition of just signing up for a TikTok account. And it took some convincing because like I had just heard it was like teenagers doing, trendy dances and stuff like that. I was like, it's not my scene. Like I'm grown. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be on a teenager app. And it was a friend of mine who's like also in their 30s who was like, no, it's not just that. Like there are all these cool little communities, and now my TikTok feed is like foragers and Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. But it was really cool to like just start to join that community and interact with other parents and be able to share some of the things I learned along the way, and learn from other folks too, who helped me kind of deepen my understanding of who I want to be as a father and as a partner too. And and now I'm here. So that was kind of like, believe it or not, that's actually the short story. That's kind of how I went through my fatherhood journey. It was very much trial by fire
Yeah.
with 2020. And again, we had about 6 weeks where people could visit, and then it was just cut off after that. But it's a lot better now.
I think we're all pandemic parents, right?
Yeah,
John?
my second was 21, so we were just when vaccines were happening. I remember we had my daughter, and my in-laws had just had their shots, their second shots. So they were like, okay, you can see her, but you gotta wait a week, and you have to wear a mask and gloves.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like all that kind of craziness before she could do it. But
the isolation periods, yeah.
And it was scary. I mean, hand sanitizer was non-existent everywhere.
Because people kept buying it, all of it up, and hoarding it, and then trying to mark up their own prices. There was that one dude who got like his whole operation shut down, and so I remember it popped up in my memories from things I shared. I was like, oh, hey, by the way, if you want to talk to him, this is public information. Here's his address and phone number.
But I mean, it's like I didn't know anything about being a dad before I became a dad, and we only had 2 days to prepare. So the one thing I was like, nobody can touch the baby without hand sanitizer. We need it, and you couldn't find it anywhere. But it's funny because so TikTok is how my wife introduced me to you. She showed me one of the Bluey videos, and I think it was the Rainbow Baby one where you're talking about that. So you can thank her for this. And we all have a special connection to Bluey because we all met in a Bluey dad group on Facebook.
Yeah, I remember the oh gosh, what was it, the Council of Bandits?
Yeah, John is a part of that. And so it's like Bluey is the glue that holds my world together. So and I get all of my information about Bluey either from that group or from your TikTok feed. So I did want to ask, what did you think of the newest like Bluey scandal where Bandit and Chili are talking about their weight?
So that episode, I actually did a live with another creator who talks about Bluey a lot. Her name's Aussie Girl Margie. She does a lot of great content. Like I dabble in Bluey, so I post about it from time to time, but it's not everything that I post about, and she's almost exclusively just Bluey stuff. So where it came in for me is like, aside from the first 40 seconds of the original cut of that episode, it was a brilliant episode. It was really funny. What I love is like when Bandit does games that I'm like, I could do that with my kids. And there's a really clever one in the backyard where, Bingo and Bluey are pretending to play tennis and Bandit is the ball. So they like fake hit him and he runs across the yard. They got a jump rope for like the net. And so he's like running back and forth, and it's a way for him to stay fit while he's also playing with the girls. I think the bummer of it was in the original cut, in the opening, it wasn't about health or wellness. It was like, I feel badly about the way that I look, and the way that they presented it falls into that realm of kids are just sponges, right? They just soak up so much stuff. And when you look at kids who eventually grow up to develop eating disorders and disordered eating, a lot of that comes from experiences that they had when they were really young, and seeing how other people view themselves and view themselves through their weight and their wellness and their health. Um, and I don't think there's like I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that exercise is really good for you, right? Like I don't think anyone
Yeah.
disagrees with that. It was really just like that he's being so down on his appearance in front of his kids as part of that episode that I think was what caused the controversy. And like I it's amazing how it kind of blew up, right? Because if you read about it in the media, it's like, oh, it's fat phobia, it's fat shaming. Like
Yeah.
we found this really extreme opinion from someone who thinks that they're just like the worst episode and cancel Bluey. And it wasn't that at all. It was literally a pediatrician who was like, this is not really a healthy message to send to impressionable young kids about health and wellness. And that, if we had just talked about how exercise is a good thing for you, that would be an incredibly different message. I think, and not to belabor the point, but when I was chatting with Margie about it on a live, she had floated like a really excellent idea. Like, what if they had opened with Bandit chasing the kids up and down the stairs, and he gets out of breath, and he's like, "Man, I want to be able to do this more, so I should probably exercise more." Right. And then it's more about what is my body capable of doing, instead of I look bad, I feel bad, like it's not okay for me to be like this. And it's interesting because I think there was a lot of pushback from like the personal responsibility crowd, where it's like, oh no, if you're fat, like go to the gym and exercise. And it's like, you talk to any exercise scientist, they'll tell you that, like, don't get me wrong, exercise is important, but a lot of weight loss is going to happen in the kitchen, right? It's nutrition, it's what are you
That's my
putting in
problem.
your body. So yeah, it was a really interesting thing to have like some level of controversy in the Bluey community. And I did see that Ludo actually took out the beginning and jumped
They
ahead
did,
in the
yeah.
episode.
Which was probably smart on their end. But I think that's all we've got about Bluey, because we could spend all day talking about it.
Oh yeah,
Literally.
it's a fantastic show.
So for as far as your main platform is TikTok, which you do have a YouTube and Instagram and everything like that. As far as your content as a parent, how do you have those challenges, or do you have those challenges of finding time to record, make content, come up with content, or a lot of parents will fall into that pitfall of just talking about their kids, and nothing outside of that. So what are those challenges you face?
Oh yeah. From the content creation standpoint, it's definitely difficult, especially because my partner and I have completely different schedules. I've got a traditional like 7:30, 4:30, Monday through Friday job, and she works nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So she sleeps during the day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm the primary caretaker, basically from Friday afternoon until Sunday. She takes care of the kids during the day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we have grandparent help Thursday, Friday. So uh, the challenge comes in is like there's not a lot of free time in there.
Yeah.
So my general rules are I try not to post unless I actually have something to say, and I don't limit my content too much. Um, it's amazing because I talk a lot about parenting and Bluey and household labor and things like that. But then I'll have a video that's randomly about Elon Musk that just like pops off and almost goes viral, which is kind of crazy. But you're right. It's really hard as a parent to find that free time in general. And then when you finally do have that free time, you're just so tired
Yeah.
that it's like, where am I going to rally to try and find some energy to do this thing? So I know a lot of my guess is like with your podcast, you probably have at least a week or two ahead in terms of content
Oh, tons of
that
weeks.
you can queue
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And so you're set. So if you need to take like a couple of weeks off, you're good.
Yeah.
Right, you have that buffer, and I don't have that buffer. I don't have anything in drafts. I don't have anything coming up next. Like it's really just something comes along, or I have an idea and I run with it. But you're right. I'm that challenge is real. That comes along with just being a parent in general. Is you spend your day helping your kids live their lives or doing your work, which usually work involves some level. If you have to interact with other people, your work involves emotional labor.
Yeah.
Right. Like some of my work is dealing with folks who are really upset or really wound up about something and helping them manage that emotion back down, let them know everything's fine. Um, and so that takes a lot out of you. And then you get to the end of the day and your kids are maxed from preschool or whatever. Like our oldest is in preschool. She comes home, she's maxed, and now she's home in a safe space. So she just lets it all out and she's just in a silly goofy mood and sometimes really irritable, understandably. And so you help them kind of live their life and manage their emotions, and then they go to bed and it's like, it's my time but I got nothing, man. Like I'm so tired. And then you get up and you do it again the next day. So it's a really challenging drag, being a parent, to try and find those breaks in there to do some stuff that you really enjoy for yourself.
Yeah, and with your content, like it a lot of it is up to date, or it's like the latest news. So you can't really have uh, a build up, otherwise it's no longer relevant. Um, so with being bigger in as a content creator, um, do you find it troublesome or a problem with managing that and then not letting it take away from your kids? Because like for me, we've got like seems like hundreds of chats on Facebook going with different things, and a lot of times when I'm with my daughter, I will just mute all of them and spend time with her. Do you ever have those troubles?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially when a video is doing really well, like I feel compelled to engage with folks in there. And not only that, like I don't want to use the term trauma dumping, but that's kind of what happens with some of the things that I post, where I might talk about mental load for moms or something like that, or I think back around Christmas time, I did a couple of gift idea videos, and there were just a bunch of women who showed up in the comments, and they're like, I do all this planning for my husband, for my kids, and then no one ever thinks of me, and like my stocking's always empty and stuff like that. And it's sad enough to hear one person say that, but when you have dozens or sometimes hundreds show up, it's really, really hard to take on that at scale. And so I'm not always able to engage in a meaningful way with folks in a way that I might want to, because it's just too much. Right. And you kind of feel compelled to engage with folks who are engaging with you. But there's not really room at this point for that. That, and I've found that like the comments on TikTok are fine to me. Like I enjoy interacting with folks there. Instagram is kind of a coin toss, and then Facebook has quickly become like a post and ghost situation for me. I'll clear out the notifications, but I really do not interact with folks much there, because I just get like the toxicity is higher in my comment section there.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I've talked to some folks who are like, oh, I love Facebook and TikTok's terrible for me. But for me, it's kind of like TikTok's been good. Instagram is hit or miss. And then Facebook is pretty rough.
Well, and I've noticed a lot of the younger generation doesn't even have Facebook anymore.
Yeah.
They're just like, you use Facebook?
Oh yeah.
What do you mean? Were you calling me a dinosaur? Like,
but it's
in full transparency, I mean, they have one of the best monetization schemes aside from YouTube, is what it is. So like I've got the ads on Reels over there, which I always believe in transparency as a content creator. So for other content creators in particular, to like try and figure out what can I do with this. And literally in my first month, without even really trying, for ads on Reels, I'm going to pull in about $1,500, which is, it would take me months and months in the TikTok creator fund to even come close to that.
Yeah.
Even with videos doing really well. So it's, yeah, with Facebook, it, I know that there aren't a lot of younger folks on there, but so far, Facebook pays the best in terms of creation, aside from YouTube. So
our most toxic group is our main group, which is Instagram,
gotcha.
because we're very LGBTQ friendly, and I have to delete. I don't deal with those arguments when people want to fight on what they believe. I just delete them and block them.
Yeah, I've had to add a lot of things to the filter list in particular, because it's like, hey, trans people exist, please don't hurt them. And then it's like, okay, groomer, it's like, you can't have a serious conversation with someone like that.
No.
It's just, it doesn't work.
That term, every time I hear it, I think it irritates me just a little bit more. Because I'm a person who has worked with kids, and the concept that that there's people who are out there trying to do general good with kids, and you say one wrong thing, or you stand up for one kid, and everyone just jumps on that. I mean, there's people who actually are trying to do good.
Yeah.
But okay, you work with one kid who's slightly different from everyone else, and suddenly people get mad at you for that. Yeah, so it's
pretty ridiculous.
It's hard.
And so one thing I've started doing, and I'm curious if you do this too. Do you add your parenting styles to how you deal with those difficult fans, and how you talk to them, the words you say? Because I've started doing that with some people. But have you started doing that with like your TikTok people and Facebook and Instagram when they want to fight you?
Every once in a while, I'll gentle parent someone if I'm in the mood for it. Like if I'm feeling a little feisty, I will. Otherwise, I tend to delete their comments or block, or like if the insult is directed specifically at me, especially if it's on Facebook, I'll basically just reply thanks for the free engagement and put like a really cheesy "you rock" gif in there. I feel like I just lost half the audience by saying it the way that I do. Tomato,
no,
but
tomato, potato, like that's
the creator called
I can
it.
tell where Tom feels really strongly about this.
Yeah.
I will die on this hill.
You have hills that you die on, Tom. Just random.
I will die on every hill. Look.
No surrender, no retreat. But yeah, it's so fascinating to me. Yeah, again, if it's directed specifically at me, like I'll sometimes play along with it, but if it's relatively innocuous, I'll leave it be. If it's derogatory or hateful to another group, it gets reported. I delete it. I sometimes grab a screenshot of it, just in case. I don't know if I have this weird conspiracy theory. I hate to even call it that. That like on TikTok, if you report a comment and then you delete it, the report goes nowhere because the comment doesn't exist anymore. And it's kind of hard because it's like I don't want that comment there, but I don't want that person to go without any level of consequence for being hateful.
I know there's an option to hide comments. So I guess you could report it and then hide it so other people have to go through the effort to find the view all comments instead of most relevant or whatever. And then even then sometimes it still gets buried and it's hard to find.
Yeah, and I filter a lot of keywords at this point. They're so predictable with their insults at this point, so it's really easy to come up with a filter list. If it's stuff for me, it's always like, I don't even know if you have to bleep this out. Like,
what?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to think, and there's never any creativity to it. It's always the same stuff. It's always like trying to take away my manhood in some way, shape, or form, implying I have low testosterone. That's a fun one. But
Look at that
the
beard.
most creative was someone called me a bag of milk.
A bag of milk? What does that mean?
I don't know. I think it's
Canadians have bags of milk.
Yeah, but
they literally sell it in a bag, and it's got like a screw
but
top.
how is that insult?
I think it's because I'm like overweight, so I think it was like a fat joke is really what it was. But I was like, that's genuinely funny.
They probably think you're eco-friendly, and that's why they said it.
Maybe, yeah. I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. The Earth is stupid. That's just.
So as far as content creating, I know a lot of content creators will include their children on there, but then you have that danger of, child predators and human trafficking and everything. And you've done good to actually keep your children out of the limelight. But are those any fears of you being in public and someone recognizing you, seeing you with your children, kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because everything goes at scale, and I know it sounds like a brag to say over 525,000 people follow me on TikTok, almost 200,000 on Instagram, almost 50,000 on Facebook, and so that's a lot of people. Like if I put my kids out there, it's not like I'm posting on an Instagram account where it's just 34 friends and family.
Right.
Like that's a lot of people to expose our kids to. And I really do love the work that Sarah from Mom Uncharted is doing. Yeah. She's a fantastic creator on TikTok. She's also on Instagram. I would encourage anyone listening to follow her because she talks a lot about this experience of sharenting and people who just overshare their kids online. I know some people roll their eyes at the whole consent topic here, but your kids can't really say, I want to be online. I want you to publish my image and my likeness and videos of me in really intense personal moments for perhaps millions of people to see. And the family run accounts really do bother me. I'm not a fan of like family run accounts where it's just like them and their kids in every single video. Because, if you have a kid who's a child actor, there are laws to protect that kid. There are laws, like in California, there are laws that say when they get paid, a certain amount has to go directly into a trust and no one can touch it until that kid turns 18. So they are guaranteed earnings from their work. There are limits to how long they can work. There are limits to what type of work they can do. And there's none of that for kids online. Like these sharenting accounts, these family accounts can and do sometimes post videos of their kids potty training or their kids in the bath or just in really I would say deeply personal moments where maybe they're having a meltdown, which kids do. Like it's developmentally normal to have a meltdown, but then when we were kids, no one filmed it and put it online for a million people to be like, that's right, mama, get out the belt. It's really disappointing to see how some people exploit their kids for likes and clout and in some cases money, and there are no laws to protect those kids. There are no laws that say what can and can't be included in that content. There are no laws about work hours, and when your parent shares you online, you're like a 5-year-old, you live with your boss. There's no guarantee that you're actually going to get paid, and people are like, oh well, they took him to Disney. I was like, that's great that they voluntarily did that, but they're not required to do that, and just because they did doesn't mean another family wouldn't. So for me, it's not even just the exploitation piece of the fact that if we're being frank, sexual predators also share the online spaces that we do. People who would prey on kids or basically pedophiles share those same online spaces. It's also that our kids deserve some level of privacy, and when we teach them about social media and how to interact with others online, that needs to be a really important lesson that comes from the parents on how to manage that appropriately. The one example I would give, and I promise I won't ramble here, but you remember back in fall when the corn kid became really popular, like it's corn, big yellow.
That's gonna be stuck in my head now.
Yeah,
big lump of knobs.
It's got the juice, and that kid was everywhere for like 2 weeks, and now no one talks about him. And this is not necessarily meant to be a critique of his parents because I don't know what they did with the money or anything like that. but he was everywhere. Like that kid, I think, was on the Today Show. He became the corn ambassador for a state. I think it was like Idaho or something random,
Some farm
where they
state.
brought him out to a state fair and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like he was on Cameo. So
Yeah.
you could pay to have
Saw
Corn
that.
Kid wish you a happy birthday. And it's like we put this kid out in front of the public with so much attention so quickly, and now no one talks about him. And I do genuinely wonder, like, is he okay? What did that do to his sense of self? Because what we told him for 2 weeks was your value and your worth came from the attention that you
Yeah.
got from millions of other people who love you. And now those people don't even remember that you exist. And that's another thing that I really worry about, like these parasocial relationships that sometimes people pick up with kids and families who post a lot online. And then, like, what does that do to a kid? What does that tell them about what their self-worth is as they grow up? Does that self-worth come from within, or does that come from validation from other people? And what are the long-term consequences of them being reinforced in that way, right? So I think
Reminds me.
it's a surprisingly big issue.
Yeah. That's. I
I
mean.
say it reminds me of the I like turtles kid. Who
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was old internet.
Yeah, that was a while ago, and like
Yeah.
I'll still see people like use gifs of him.
Um,
um, like for responses to stuff, and like someone will post a picture or like comment on something anywhere near having to do with the turtle, and they'll post a gif of him. It's like, I like turtles.
but if speaking of the sharenting groups, if you haven't had the chance yet, the Dad Challenge podcast, he's a YouTuber. This guy has made it his personal mission to take on family vloggers and shame them until they get into a spot where they're acting right.
Oh, I like this guy already.
Yeah, he's really funny too. He's very aggressive in his approach.
I'll have to
But
check it out. Yeah.
yeah, but as far as have you had any interactions with fans outside, like in the wild?
No, I have had people that I work with who were like, "You showed up on my Facebook page," which is because I don't really talk about like the content creation stuff at
Yeah.
work. But that was how everybody found out. Was like I had a couple of things that went viral, and then I think it was like Bored Panda did an article about it without talking to me first. That's fine. And then like it showed up all over Facebook, and then people were like sending me screenshots and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, that is me. I'm kind of a big deal on a fairly irrelevant social media network that mostly inflates my ego. And yeah, that's essentially as far as it goes. But working from home, I truthfully don't get out much because again, since I'm solo with the kids over the weekend,
Yeah.
I would love to go out. I would love to do park stuff, but our 1-year-old is very much a Velcro baby, and our 3-year-old is feral. And because that's what 3-year-olds are. They're feral.
Yeah.
She's
They're
all over the
teenagers.
place. Yeah, that's exactly it. So if I were to take them to a park, that park better have a fence around it.
Yeah.
And I am also going to look like I'm abducting my own child when it's time to leave, because she will kick and scream and fight and make all sorts of noise, and it is so hard to figure out how to talk her out of, we have to go home. Like we can't just stay here all day. We have to go do other things. So it's very difficult to like solo 2 kids at once. So
Yeah.
we mostly stay around the house is what it is. So I long story short, I'm just not out in public all that often to actually run into folks who may recognize me from something online, but it happens a lot with people at work who will send me a DM and be like, you showed up on Facebook or Instagram or something like that.
Has your work said anything about your content creation?
No, they've been super supportive, which is hilarious because my last job did not like me posting on social media at all. I had even like at one point our comms person left in my old team, and I took over the social media accounts, and they like I grew it. We had quite a few more followers. We had much more interaction. Like all our stats were up, but they ended up shifting that back to the marketing department instead of let me take that on. And they had multiple conversations with me, like anything that was even remotely political that I would post online on my own accounts, on my own time, on my own devices, almost always ended up turning into a conversation. And this time around, my job's like, we don't care. They actually interviewed me at one point about my TikTok account to talk about like should educators be using TikTok, and I lean a little bit towards maybe, but probably not, but maybe. Um, so they've been much more supportive, which is really cool, and I think they recognize like I do this outside of work. It's not, and I don't talk about work. That's the other thing. I really don't talk about work or where I work.
Same.
So I'm not like creating any weird situations for them.
My job doesn't even know I do a podcast, and I'm going to keep it like that as long as I can.
I'm just going to start posting on your wall all this stuff.
I mean, I post on my Facebook, and I've got people I work with on Facebook. Like a couple of my coworkers know I have a podcast, but as far as my boss, I don't. Anybody that can fire me, I don't have them on any social media, and I don't tell them, "Hey, I got a podcast. You should listen to it." Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's one of my fears if our podcast ever gets to that level. But as far as I keep saying as far as a lot. It's my verbal.
Well, as far as I know,
today.
I haven't noticed. So
as far as
that was you were about to start number 6, just then.
Yeah, you find those verbal crutches when you especially if you do a podcast or an audio form, you listen to your voice a lot, and you find those things that you say a lot. Mm-hmm. But has your partner? How has she taken to your growth and everything, like, because you're kind of you're making the rest of us look bad. So especially with one of the posts where you were leaving and you were doing all this stuff for your partner, and I was like, man, I got to step up my game. But what are her thoughts on all this?
I'm really fortunate. She's been incredibly supportive of the whole thing. She actually has a note on her phone where she tracks like my most viral videos, so she knows the running top 10. Even I don't know that stuff. So anytime I have a video go over 1 million views, she adds it to the list, which is really cool. And I can always bounce ideas off of her for feedback on videos and things like that. She'll let me know if people are acting up in the comments, so she'll tag me and be like, hey, here's another one, so I can hop in and like delete that comment or report it or block that person, because we've had a couple of people who just, they're pretty awful, and if you get hundreds or thousands of comments on a video, you can't possibly look at them all. You have to rely on some other people for help. She's even moderated a live for me, which I really appreciate, because doing that, like, I didn't even think before my first live that like, oh, hey, we should probably have a mod in here to help manage some of the comments and the people who act awful. So she's been incredibly supportive. I'm really, really fortunate that Kelly's so on board with this.
Yeah. My wife just tolerates it.
It's a fun hobby, though, to create something, put it out into the world.
It is. And I mean, even if the way I look at it, if I get one person that is like, that finds me helpful, then I've done my job as a creator. And that's kind of Kevin Smith's mindset on all that. So, do you guys have any questions? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
One thing I wanted to just talk about, I've been watching a lot of your videos this week.
Yeah, I made them do that.
Well, I knew of you, but I did not actually know your name and everything. So when they mentioned you, I was like, oh, it's that guy. I know of him. So I watched like dozens of your videos this week, and I was very impressed. You, at least in your videos, you seem to have no fear of confronting people and the content they are creating when it conflicts with what you know is right about sharing things with your children online, like the one of the woman and mocking basically her baby, fat baby, and just you show no fear of engaging into that, of just digging right in. And I was very impressed with that, because there are a lot of people who probably wish they could say that, and I feel like you're stepping up and filling that voice to those people. And will it change all of them? No, but it might get a few of them their attention.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, a lot of that times it's not necessarily for the person who posted the original video. It's just if you look at those videos in the comments, what they'll frequently do, it seems like it's the same script every time. People will push back in the comments, and they'll either disable comments entirely, or they will delete comments that are critical and just leave the ones that are positive. And so essentially what you get are a bunch of people who are kind of rah-rahing this behavior that I find distasteful or morally or ethically problematic. And really what I'm trying to do is just form a wall for them to run into and be like, actually, this behavior is not cool. This behavior is not okay. Because again, if they're deleting comments, if they're disabling comments, there's no one to say I disagree, right? And they let it stand. Like the video that you mentioned, where this woman was like basically fat shaming her infant child or infant daughter. I'm not just thinking about what is the video, because there were a lot of people who were dismissive of that. They're like, oh, just she's just a joke. Like if you followed her, you would know it was just a joke. And I was like, it's not really funny because you're making fun of your kid in exchange for likes, in exchange for clout, in exchange probably for money. I'm assuming that person was probably in the creator fund, and maybe still is. And if that leads to growth for their account, that makes them more appealing for ads to do brands and things like that. So there's a financial incentive too. And B, I'm also thinking like when this kid grows up, they've got a digital record of themselves already that they didn't create, that their parent created. And one of the first videos that they're going to see of themselves with their mom is their mom making fun of their weight and how pudgy they were as a baby. And babies are usually pudgy, right?
Yeah.
Not
Supposed
always,
to
but
be.
they're usually pudgy, and that's a completely normal thing. They go this way, and then they go this way, and then they go this way, and then they go this way, and it's completely normal that happens. So, yeah, I'm not always trying to convince the OP in that case. It's more just forming a wall to be like, that was messed up. I don't want you to have to bleep me on the podcast. So like obviously different words would be chosen, but I'm just trying to like add some resistance to the conversation.
No, it's
If
definitely
possible.
appreciated. It's like the face and the voice you're doing right now is the voice you do that on those videos, and it's impressive and it's necessary. And so I just want to say I applauded you for that. The fact that you're just going in no fear, engaging onto these people, and like you said, the people who watch them, and just being that counter, that pushback, which sadly there are many topics in this world that need that. So I applaud you for that. I also thought it was very fun
John?
trying to look up information of you and your name, which I love the name. It took me a moment to realize why you picked that name, and I like it now. But I tried to Wikipedia you as Worldshaker, and I thought it was funny some of the other things that popped up ahead of you, like the fantasy novel series Worldshaker by Richard Harland.
Apologies to
No
Richard Harland.
idea of
Yeah.
what that was, but I love the fact that you pop up with that. There is a D&D. I don't know if you do D&D. There is a feat focused on that name for spell casting of making yourself stronger with nature. So things like that popping
Nice.
up ahead of you, and I thought that was very funny. Just like, how do I find any information on this guy besides his, if you put Worldshaker TikTok, boom, there you are. There's no contention at all. But I don't know. The internet is funny that way, especially Google.
Yeah, and I share the same name with a character from Alias, and even though Alias has been off the air for like a decade or something, like it still
God.
shows up in search results.
Now I feel old.
So there's an actor named Michael Vartan who played the character Michael Vaughn on Alias, and so I was like, that's not a bad person to have in your search results, right? He's a very handsome guy, so like if people confuse us, no harm, no foul, right? So yeah, that's certainly been a point of contention, but relaunching the website here in a couple of weeks, so hopefully that will help with some of the SEO in there, make me a little bit
Counter a
easier
little
to
bit,
find.
but regardless, it was a fun dive just trying to find you on there. Like I said, until I actually got wise and just put TikTok, and then boom, you were all over.
Yeah. I think there's
wait,
also
that's
a
the guy you
rapper
meant.
who goes by
I just wanted to
Worldshaker.
find a face. I was like, I know I've heard of this guy.
Some artist or writer from the 80s is just going to notice the big sell in his books, and he's not going to know why.
Well, you're welcome.
It's
You're
for
welcome, Richard Harlan.
If you want to give us any of those funds,
Should
that
have
would be
that.
great. Thank you. Yeah,
finder's fees.
I should add him to my Amazon
you
affiliate
go.
program.
For those TikToks where you do the videos talking about other people, do you ever worry about the backlash that can have on things? Like
Oh yeah,
with
definitely.
who was it? Dadvocate. She started a war with quite a few people, and it can get messy sometimes. But is that a fear for you?
Yeah, and that's why I'm always trying to focus on the behavior and not the person as a starting point. But yeah, there's always a risk. There's always a risk, especially when you are criticizing a creator with a significantly larger following than you. One of the recent videos that I did was about like a couple account, and like they posted a video where he's just like body slamming her to the ground over and over and over again. They're playing it off as like they're playing around, and it did not look right. Like maybe the
No.
first one looked a little playful, but after that I was like, this is really uncomfortable to watch. This feels like borderline abusive. And they do have more followers than me, so there's always a risk that like the people who really enjoy following them, who have that sort of creepy parasocial relationship that can crop up where it's like, oh no, I know these people, they're my friends, even though we've never met and never talked, but I comment on every one of their videos, so they must know who I am. Sometimes what happens is you get a report bombed, where just they kind of brigade your account and they report your video en masse, and that triggers sometimes it'll trigger a TikTok ban. Sometimes it'll trigger like your a community guidelines violation, and your account becomes at risk of either being banned, or it can affect like eligibility for monetization programs and things like that. So I've seen a lot of prominent creators who have fallen victim to that sort of review, or not review, but report bombing. That happened to Casey Davis, who runs Domestic Blisters, when she was pointing or pushing back on some transphobes who popped up in her comments. It happened to Barrett, and I'm trying to think. There were one or two other people who it even happened to. I don't know if you follow Katie Asora. She talks a lot about ADHD stuff
Yeah,
on
she's
TikTok. She's a great follow. She's on Instagram too. I think she's got a YouTube account. She's got 47 side projects and Dungeons and Dragons stuff too. So a really cool creator. But you know, at one point her account got banned. I don't even remember what for, and that was eventually restored. So it can completely uproot your life if you criticize the wrong person and their fans decide to take it out on you by saying like false reporting your videos and things like that. So there's always a risk, but I feel like the risk of saying nothing is bigger.
Yeah, it definitely is. And she also has me convinced that I'm undiagnosed ADHD. If you were to see our projects list, like we've got a D&D thing we're working on too, along with everything else.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's see here. So, what do you have any funny stories or any interactions that you have from TikToking, like from different parents or anything like that?
I don't know about funny stories necessarily. Um, Gosh, I wish something was coming to mind. We've had plenty of interactions, but um, yeah, gosh, I wish I had something more for you in this moment,
You're
but
good.
on the spot, I'm not pulling anything deep from the memory banks, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I have really appreciated the interactions that I've been able to have with other people and other parents on there in particular, because I haven't really had the chance to do a lot of that in person. It's only been like this year where two other people in our friend group had their first kids,
Right.
and we've been able to spend time with them and kind of go through the struggles of parenting together. And it's like, oh, this is what I had really wanted all along. This is the type of connection that I was really hoping for. and commiseration, because it's like, I feel like you guys might have talked about this on another podcast, but it's so weird becoming a father, because you're one person before your kid shows up, and then they show up, and you, over like this period of 6 months, become a completely different person built on top of that original, and you're not quite the same anymore. And it's really hard to explain that weird sense of dissonance that comes along with that experience. And so it's really nice to talk to other parents who also went through that, because like you do kind of transform. It is hard to explain sometimes, and this is no disrespect to folks who don't have kids by choice or any other reason. It's totally cool, but yeah, it's really hard to explain what that experience is like until you talk to another parent who's also going through
when
the same
you
stuff.
suddenly are just handed a tiny person and said, "Here."
Yeah,
Oh
they just
yeah,
give it to
You're
you,
in
like,
charge.
and you can go home with your baby. Like, it's amazing. I was like,
They
wow,
don't.
you trust me with this? I once backed into someone else's car in a parking lot. Like,
I
this
believe the old joke is, "I can't even operate a VCR, but yes, I will tend to this child."
Be kind, rewind. So.
God, I remember they even had those like completely separate rewinding machines.
Oh,
So you
the
could
yeah, I
fast
had
fast
one.
forward the
ones.
multiple
Yes.
tape videos.
So
Yeah. So you
when
could like rewind the one and then put in the next tape and keep watching.
when DVDs first came out, they used to someone got the idea of selling a DVD rewinder until people realized that
Oh
it wasn't
no.
needed. People bought it.
I am positive they did.
Yeah.
And I remember
Is that like that? It's like that guy who sold a solar dryer, like solar clothes dryer, and he would ship it and it would arrive and it was just like string to hang up your clothes on the line.
You're just like, there you go. I mean, technically he's right.
I mean, it's not a lie.
So this is a fear that I have, especially, which I think if I were to gain superpowers, this is definitely something that would happen. But how do you not let the power go to your head? Do you have any or tips for that?
Oh, just you mean with having like a larger platform?
Yeah. Because you do, as a follower with a large following, you have a lot of power that you can aim at people and do different things. How do you not let that corrupt you?
It's kind of like the Spider-Man rule, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Is that the so you're right, there is a lot of power that comes along with it, so my goal is always to try and leverage that for good. So that's why when you look at my content, you see me talking about things like mental load, equitable distributions of household labor, equity in the economic market, um, uh, yeah, parenting issues, things like that, economic issues, the fact that we still have no paid parental leave in the US inexplicably. And when companies do bother to offer it, it's almost always a really paltry offering for fathers as opposed to mothers. And it's just really frustrating. It's like, I totally get why someone who gives birth would need more time, but that doesn't mean that like dad only needs 2 weeks at home to bond with their new child and help their partner recover from a physically traumatic event, right? And when I talk about those things, it's to try and bring more attention and momentum to them. And like I was talking about earlier, to push back on ideas that I find to be really toxic or problematic. So in the meantime, just trying to use it for good. I'm not going to say it's always perfect. Like I do feel kind of bad because there was one creator who was very similar to someone that I really like. And I had posted a video kind of comparing the two, because I found some instances where, you know, basically someone was copying this creator. So I made like a little video kind of highlighting that, like a little call out post. And people got kind of mean in the comments. They were basically calling them the Wish version of like the original person. And I think I had responded to one of the comments, like laughing along with it. And instead of it being like, "Hey, it's pretty crappy to copy someone else's style," it turned into, "Let's all cyberbully this person." I had to shut it down. Like I had to eventually, I had tried to keep the comment section clean. I had deleted some stuff where I thought folks were being a little ridiculous criticizing. And as it went on and as it grew, I was like, I feel bad for deleting those comments because they were right. So I just went ahead and privated the video because I don't agree with copying someone else's stuff. Like, there's more than enough space to be creative, but at the same time, I don't think that means that I get to sit here and let a bunch of people cyberbully someone else because I criticize them, right? Yeah. So privating the video is usually the fastest way to put out that fire, because then no one can stitch it, no one can duet it. It's not even available to rip, so you could do a dirty stitch where like you just download the video and then do your own. I do try and do good. I'm not always perfect, but that's the general challenge.
That's all you can do.
It.
Yeah, you can only do your best.
Yeah. I get a little bit of power and I let it go to my head. You can ask these guys. Like I was telling them earlier, I was like, okay, guys, watch all of his videos, learn everything you can so we can have a good conversation. But we're pushing at the hour mark, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But where can people find you at as far as social media and everything?
Fastest way to get a hold of me is usually beacons.ai/Worldshaker, and all my socials are in there. So whichever network you tend to prefer, everything's listed in there, along with some links to articles I talk about or other podcasts and stuff that I really love. So I'll add you guys in there. Just beacons.ai/Worldshaker. Just, it's my link tree. Everything's in there. Easiest way to find all my stuff.
Yeah, and
sorry.
And so
I am very hard to find on Google. And I have search alerts set up for the other Michael Vaughns, and they are not doing well. They are doing very poorly.
Those poor Michaels. You should add them to your beacon as well. Just to Michaels Unite.
Try and help them with some SEO,
Yeah. So just as you said, like I think a good way to end it is with great power comes great responsibility. And that's about as dad as it gets. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a rate and review. Your feedback fuels us and helps us reach more parents and make a positive impact on their lives. Are you looking for a daily dose of dad jokes? Follow us on Instagram @AsDadAsItGetsPod. There you can find the latest dad jokes and keep up with the latest news and updates about our podcast. Also, do you have a parenting question or do you want to spotlight a dad? Reach out to us by email at asdadasitgets@gmail.com.